Welcome to GAAPP Academy Patient Access to Clinical Trials. My name is Lindsay DeSantis, and I'm the Executive Director of GAAPP. Before we get started today, I want to take a moment to thank our GAAPP Academy sponsors, AstraZeneca, Sanofi Genzyme Regeneron, Novartis, and GSK. Today's agenda includes an overview of clinical trials, why they're important in the treatment of chronic diseases. We will also welcome Richard Town from Antidote, a company whose mission is to transform the way that patients connect in order to accelerate medical research. Our presentation will last approximately 25 minutes and will conclude with a question and answer session. Please feel free to submit questions in the chat throughout the presentation. So let's get started. What is a clinical trial? A clinical trial or study, sometimes called interventional studies, is research using people who volunteer to participate that adds to the medical knowledge about that study. In a clinical trial, volunteers receive specific interventions according to a protocol created by the investigators for that trial. Interventions can be medical products such as drugs or devices, procedures, or changes to a participant's behavior. Outcomes are measured to determine safety and effectiveness. Clinical trials have standards or eligibility criteria outlining who can participate, and all clinical studies are led by a principal investigator, most often a medical doctor. It's important that the participant's usual healthcare provider or providers work with the research team so participants can make sure that the study protocol will not conflict with other medications or treatments being received. Clinical trials are conducted to get insight into what works and what doesn't in medicine and healthcare. They're the best way to understand what works in treating chronic diseases. Clinical trials are designed to answer two important questions. The first, does this new treatment work in humans? If it does, it's important for physicians to find out how well it works. Is it better than the treatment being used presently? If not, then is it reducing side effects? Clinical trials are intended to find diagnoses leading to improved treatment for chronic disease. The second question, is this new treatment safe? Does the benefit of the new treatment outweigh its possible risks? It's well known that no treatment or procedure in common use is free of potential risks. Answering these questions requires different trials, each with a different purpose and duration. Clinical trials are extensive research procedures. They involve years of experiments and thousands of patients, but ultimately they can lead to a better diagnosis and breakthrough in the treatment of chronic diseases. There are 4 phases of a clinical trial, standardized by the FDA and EMA and most of the medicines agencies globally in order to test a treatment, find dosages, and look for side effects. If after the first 3 phases, researchers find a drug or other intervention to be safe and effective, it goes for FDA or EMA approval for clinical use, and that agency continues to monitor its effects. Medicine agencies require phase 1, 2, and 3 trials to be conducted to determine if the drug can be approved for use. A phase 1 trial focuses primarily on safety and side effects. Phase 1 tests an experimental treatment on a small group of 20 to 80 participants of often healthy people. Phase 2 generally involves more people, somewhere between 100 to 300 participants. The goals of phase 2 are to obtain preliminary data on whether the drug works in people who have a specific disease or condition. Safety and short-term side effects continue to be studied in phase 2, and this phase can last for several years. Phase 3 continues to gather information about safety and effectiveness with a deeper look at different populations and different dosages, and using the drug in combination with other drugs and therapies. The number of people usually ranges from several hundred to approximately 3,000 people. After this stage is completed, if the FDA or EMA finds that the trial results are positive, it can approve the experimental drug or device. And then you move into phase 4. During phase 4 trials, a device's or drug's effectiveness and safety continue to be monitored in large, diverse populations. Side effects and safety sometimes aren't clear until the drug is made available for a longer period of time.
The idea of clinical trials may be confusing or even unappealing. We may not like the idea of being experimented on. We might wonder if our safety will be compromised. However, it's likely that we don't really know what's involved. Clinical trials are a safe way for researchers to investigate potential new treatments, working with participants to evaluate how they work and potential side effects. All available treatments have completed clinical trials, making sure they are safe and effective. Every clinical trial has 4 key phases. Within Phase 1, you'll help researchers understand the safety of new treatment in healthy people, attending frequent medical examinations and reporting any side effects. In Phase 2, you'll help investigate different effective dosages, again, reporting side effects. Phase 3 takes a larger group to give a clearer understanding of how effective potential treatments may be compared to what's currently available. Lastly, Phase 4 continues after a treatment has been approved, helping study the benefits and potential risks over a longer period. So, what benefits do participants receive? By taking regular medical tests needed for the study, you keep better track of your health and you're closely monitored while enrolled. You receive potential new treatments before they're publicly available. Without your participation, and that of many others, new treatments can't be tested and certified safe and effective. Latest treatments can only be made available if patients participate in trials. Patient feedback is valued highly and has a big impact on the outcome of the study. Participating in a clinical trial is your chance to take an active part and help advance treatment options.
Thank you, Lindsay. I remind you, Lindsay is the director for the Global Allergy and Airways Patient Platform. Thank you for introducing us the clinical trials and how they benefit the patients. And now our colleagues from Antidote will introduce the clinical trials matching tool for you, for your organizations to use and to implement in your own websites if you're interested, and how can they help your patient community.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Town, the Senior Clinical Informatics Manager at Antidote and a licensed pharmacist. My responsibility at Antidote is the maintenance of the match tool and our other clinical content. And I'm really happy to be presenting here today to talk about Antidote and what our Antidote match tool does. So in this presentation, I'll go over a few things. Number 1, what is Antidote's mission? Number 2, what is Antidote Match? What it means for patients, what it means for partners, how it works, and then we'll have some time to take questions and leave our contact information here. So what is Antidote's mission? Antidote's mission is to accelerate medical research. As you can see, our mission statement is that our mission is to enable faster medical innovation by transforming how sponsors and patients connect. I believe Antidote has the same mission as almost everyone on this call. We want to match patients with clinical research when and where they need it, not just some patient slices, not just some disease niches, but everyone. And that can come in a variety of ways. Obviously, clinical trials are so varied. Obviously, some people will want observational trials. Maybe some people will only settle for interventional trials. There's such a wide range of trials and ways that we can help patients here. With these clinical trials, the number one issue is patient recruitment. Almost 60 million patients are needed for clinical trials today, and 80% of those trials miss the deadlines because they can't find enough patients. In fact, 50% of sites under-enroll, and that means up to $8 million per day are lost in value. So with that, if clinical trials can't find patients, and patients who are looking for clinical trials don't really know where to start or maybe how they can participate in an area that's not near them or connected to their local office, that's where Antidote comes in. And this is where, like I said, Antidote has the Antidote Match tool. The Antidote Match tool is a tool that takes clinicaltrials.gov, which is a site that was never meant for patients, and it converts the trials on clinicaltrials.gov into plain text that we then have annotations for, which I can get into in a little bit. It's real-time, simple, easy to use. There's no work required on the side of our partners. It is completely responsive to changes in clinicaltrials.gov. The tool automatically updates without any actual effort needed from the people hosting the tool. And it is embedded by over 250 of our partners. And our partners can include nonprofits, research organizations, and other patient advocacy groups. They all host Match for free. There's nothing involved with that. It's just a simple setup. And a couple of the benefits include that we use friendly patient-centric language. Instead of asking a patient, for instance, do you have atopic dermatitis? A lot of patients might not be familiar that they have atopic dermatitis. We can ask them something much more simple like, do you have eczema? And this wording is developed in conjunction with our partners. So whoever's hosting our tool, we'd like to meet up with them and try to see what language do you want your patients to see? What language might they be comfortable with? And what language will they be able to engage the most with? And this can also generate unique data where when a patient goes through the journey, the patient has the option to share their data with us if they want to match to clinical trials in the future. And then we can relay that data back to our partner to let them know what kinds of patients are looking at their clinical trial page. And we can look at things such as age, we can look at things such as gender, race and ethnicity, location, and a couple of the different answers to the questions. And we find that it's very valuable. Another benefit of Antidote is just to really drive that home. Patients don't need to leave their information with us, but we find that a lot of patients choose to because they have such a good experience connecting with the research that we have. And like I mentioned, placement is very, very flexible. There's no programming needed. It can go up one of many places. You can see a couple examples right here. The buttons look different. They're customized. We work in conjunction with our design team and our partners in order to develop that button for what meets their needs the most and what matches their website style. So what feeds the Match tool? How does this all work? That's a process we call annotation. Like I said, clinicaltrials.gov, it's not a patient-friendly website. It was never designed for patients. So what we do is we take a live data feed from clinicaltrials.gov for recruiting and not yet recruiting trials, and we pull that into our Antidote Match tool. And that's automatic. Whenever a sponsor adds a new trial, it's automatically added to our queue for annotation. And we have a team called the Antidote Annotation Army. It's a bunch of medically trained humans and machine learning that annotate all those inclusion and exclusion criteria into more patient-friendly terms. For instance, like I said, it's all about gathering the information that a patient can expect and what they can answer on a pre-screener. We don't want to falsely fail patients before they have the chance to go to a clinical trial site and talk to an investigator, because investigators have different opinions on different patients. However, we can screen for hard exclusions, and that's very dependent based on the trial and based on the disease area. For instance, maybe for, like I mentioned before, atopic dermatitis or eczema, a hard exclusion is having psoriasis for certain trials. We can definitely exclude on that and ask the question in a way that the patient is comfortable with. On the right there, you can see a relevant clinical trials result page to the patient as they go through that journey. We ask about 15 questions, and then they're brought to the trial results. It's a very, very patient-centric, easy-to-view page, unlike clinicaltrials.gov. You can see that there were 11 trials found for the patient in that example on the right. And on the left, you can see there's some filters where the patient can filter by study phase. They can also filter by study type, whether that's registry, interventional, observational. And they have another opportunity to request trial alerts in case they didn't match to any trials, or if there was a limited number of trials that maybe they're not too interested in. This is all driven by a patient's willingness to travel, by the way. One of the questions that we ask is, how far are you willing to travel? And that can range from anywhere from 10 miles to any distance. So we're not giving patients results that they might not be willing to travel for. And we find that that has a huge difference in allowing the patient to view a curated list of results that's not overwhelming like clinicaltrials.gov. So with that, as I've mentioned a little bit, the Antidote Match tool allows us to do some pretty robust partner reporting. Once again, Antidote Match tool is free, the reporting is free, and any partner that chooses to host the Antidote Match tool, if they want, they can receive a monthly anonymous match demographics report that shows the match user landscape. And that can include some anonymous data from the following match questions, such as the condition searched by the user. We can tend to hard code a journey to automatically pop up for partners. Using the example of the day, if a partner wants to search atopic dermatitis, that will be, that will be the condition that's automatically brought to you by the tool. We can also allow for any condition in that search box. We can also collect the location of the user at the time of the search. Travel tolerance, like I mentioned, how far are they willing to travel to participate in a study? It's a pretty interesting insight because some people will be willing to travel the nation for an effective treatment. You can also collect the age of the user. And something I haven't really mentioned is that there's a couple different journeys that the patient can take, as in they can search for themselves or a caregiver could search for a patient. Maybe the patient is too young to search for a trial on their own, or maybe they're, unfortunately unable to search for a trial on their own and they need a caregiver to do so for them. We have two separate wordings for that. And with the caregiver journey, it ultimately shifts from do you have this to do they have this? And finally, we have a really robust race and ethnicity question. We have a lot of different options, and we found that it is some pretty interesting insights where we do get a wide mix of people using the tool. And with that, thank you so much for giving me the time to present today. We'd like to take any questions, and listed below is the contact information for me and Valerie, our partnerships associate. So with that, once again, thank you so much for listening to this presentation and giving me the opportunity to present. And we hope to hear from you soon about the match tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that incredible presentation on Antidote Clinical Trials Matching Tool. I hope that you all find it very interesting and many of you reach out to Antidote to implement this on your website. It's free of charge, so if any of you is interested in implementing this tool in your own website to serve your own community at your own country or regional level, just reach out to us via info@gaapp.org, info@gaapp.org, and we would put you in contact with Antidote for you to start that conversation with them to set up this in your website. So now, before we start the Q&A session, as usual, we would like to thank you, our sponsors for GAAPP Academy 2022. So thanks for AstraZeneca, Sanofi Genzyme, Regeneron, Novartis, and GSK for your generous support to make GAAPP Academy possible. Thank you, and I open the floor to your questions.